Now we're looking at the prophecies of cities and things like that. If the Bible is the Word of God, it would be historically accurate, and that has proven to be the case. In addition to the prophecy, I'm going to give you some examples of ancient cities that were mentioned in prophecies. And the first one we're going to take out is Babylon. At the beginning of this prophecy, Babylon was subject to the Assyrians. Babylon would not become a major power for another 100 years. Then in Isaiah chapter 13, verse 19 through 21, which was written in 712 BC, and Jeremiah 51, verses 26 and 43, which is written in 600 BC, some of the prophecies of this passage tell us the following. It tells us that Babylon shall be destroyed, and that was fulfilled. Babylon was conquered in 538 BC, and it had walls 90 feet thick and 300 foot high with towers that were even higher. And the walls were 14 miles on each side, and yet, as prophesied, the city was conquered. And then its prophecy was that Babylon will never be inhabited again. Today, Babylon remains uninhabited. And then another prophecy is that the Arabians shall never pitch their tents there, and the Arabs will pitch their tents most anywhere, but won't do so in Babylon because of their fear of the poisonous serpents and scorpions, and because they are superstitious, believing the place to be haunted, and the city is uninhabited by humans. And it says shepherds will not make their sheepfold in Babylon. Today there are no sheepfolds around Babylon. It also prophesied that Babylon would be inhabited by wild beasts. Today the wild beasts of the deserts live there. And it says the corner and the foundation stones of Babylon will not be removed. So the bricks and the building material have been salvaged from Babylon over the years, but till this day the corner and the foundation stones have not been touched. These stones were imported to Babylon and still remain. Today, Babylon has few visitors. Almost all of the ancient cities are on the tourist route, but not Babylon. And then we have the prophecy about Edom, which we find in Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 16 through 18. And that was written about 600 BC. And it prophesied that Edom would be conquered. Well, we did see Edom was conquered 1,236 years later in 636 AD by the Mohammedans. And it said Edom would be desolate. From the time Edom was conquered in 636 AD until today, the city has remained desolate. Edom shall not be inhabited again. Even today, no animals or people have been found in Edom. Then there's a Golden Gate in Jerusalem. Ezekiel wrote about the Golden Gate of Jerusalem in 574 BC, and that's in Ezekiel 44, verses 1 through 3. The gate would be shut and no man would try to enter it. And Jesus fulfilled the first part of this prophecy about 33 AD by riding into the city through this gate on his triumphal entry. And when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, the walls and the gate were torn down. In 1543 AD, the Sultan Suleiman restored the walls of Jerusalem, and since the road to the Golden Gate was no longer used, the Sultan ordered it closed. He restored the gate with its arches and ornaments and walled up the gate's openings. And there are, looking at the city of Tyre now, there are more than 1,500 detailed prophecies concerning the future of some cities, kings, and kingdoms. Ezekiel recorded his prophecies of Tyre in 585 BC in Ezekiel chapter 26, verses 3 through 5, 7, 12, 14, and 16. This was one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. And the following is just a short list of prophecies that were fulfilled. And Ezekiel prophesied that Nebuchadnezzar would take the city. And Ezekiel chapter 26, verses 7 through 11, tells us of Nebuchadnezzar's attack. And this attack occurred exactly as prophesied just a few years after the prophecy. However, Tyre was rebuilt on an island half a mile offshore and remained standing. And then in Ezekiel chapter 26, verses 3 through 5 and 12 through 14, it was prophesied that many nations, not just one, would attack the city. And in 322 BC, we find that many nations under the leadership of Alexander the Great defeated Tyre. And then Ezekiel prophesied again that the city would become flat like a rock, and the stones and timbers and dust would be laid in the midst of the water. And so when Alexander the Great took the city of Tyre, he built a causeway to the island, using the stones, timbers, and even scraping the dust of the city. So all of this completely fulfilled the prophecy of Ezekiel in the smallest details. And then Ezekiel also prophesied that the old city of Tyre would never be rebuilt. To this day, it has not been rebuilt and is used by fishermen and is a flat place for spreading their nets, exactly as prophesied by Ezekiel. And then next we have the Hittite Empire. This empire is mentioned 46 times in the Bible, and one time scholars questioned the existence of the Hittites because the Bible was the only source that mentioned them. And that's in 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 6, 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 29, and Exodus 3, verse 8. However, there's now proof of the Hittite Empire. The capital city of the Hittites, Hattusha, was found and excavated, proving their existence. Other proofs found were remnants, tablets, and documents and other excavations, all proving the existence of the Hittites and the accuracy of the Bible. Next, we go to parts of the I want to tell you that parts of the Bible were written 4,000 years ago. And even though the Bible is not and was never meant to be a scientific manual, it is scientifically accurate. Many things were explained in the Bible long before science became aware of them. And in each event or incident, the Bible has been proven accurate. As at the time they were mentioned, only God could have known these things. So the following shows some, certainly not all things, explained in the Bible prior to scientific knowledge of them. Makes one think that if the scientists had read the Bible and believed the Bible, they would have been far ahead of their discoveries. But they didn't. There was prophecy, and the book of Job is probably one of the oldest books in the Bible. And God told us in Job chapter 26, verse 7, written in about 1520 BC, that the earth hangs on nothing. It is suspended in empty space. And then we look for the fulfillment, and that's something that was not realized by science until just a few hundred years ago. The book of Job says in Job 28, verse 25, that air has weight. Before the 17th century, science said air was weightless. Today, science says air has weight. And Job says in Job chapter 36, verse 27, that God makes drops of water, draws them up, and by the heat of the sun they arise from the earth into the atmosphere, where they are condensed and return to the earth as rain. The hydrological cycle mentioned here wasn't known until the 17th century, and not well known by science until the 20th century. Yet the Bible explained it in 1520 BC. And then around 1520 BC, in Job chapter 38, verse 16, we're told that about the springs of the sea, that the sea has springs. Mankind had no way to know about freshwater springs on the ocean floor until recently, when science found thousands of underwater springs in the ocean. Then in about 1490 BC, the Bible tells us in Leviticus chapter 17, verse 11, that the life of the flesh is in the blood. Yet Science did not understand that until recently. Previously, doctors used bloodletting as a method of healing. And the Bible teaches us that the universe had a beginning. For a little over 2,000 years, philosophers and scientists rejected that biblical view. Today, these same people accept the fact that the universe had a beginning, and they say it was formulated from the Big Bang Theory. The Bible teaches that all humankind are of one blood, one race, and descended from one man and one woman. You'll find that in Acts chapter 17, verse 26, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 45, and Genesis chapter 3, verse 20. 19th century biology claimed that the different races descended from lower animals. Today, genetics has proven that there is only one human race. And the Bible teaches us that there was a worldwide flood that covered the earth and destroyed all the creatures on the earth except those in the ark. The 19th century geologists claimed that the rock layers and fossils found in them were formed as sediments and were deposited slowly over time. But today, geology has proven that many rock layers were deposited and catastrophically buried fossils within only minutes or hours, not over a long period of time. And then in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22, it tells us the earth is a sphere. Back then, science said the earth was flat. Today, science agrees that the earth is a sphere. Jeremiah 33, verse 32, told us the stars can't be numbered. Back then, science said there were 1,000 stars. Today, science says the stars can't be numbered. 1 Corinthians 15:41 tells us that each star is different. Back then, science said all stars are the same. Today, they say each star is different. Jeremiah 33:32 tells us that the stars cannot be numbered. Back then, the science said there were 1,000 stars. Today, science say the stars can't be numbered. And then Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 1 tells us that the wind blows in cyclones. Science said the winds blew straight. And today, science says the wind blows in cyclones. And then in 2 Samuel, verses 22 and 16, and Jonah chapter 2, verse 6, it says the ocean floor has deep valleys and mountains. Science said the floors were flat. Today, scientists says ocean floors have deep valleys and mountains. So we find the Bible has been proven true and accurate in many different fields and can clearly be trusted as the actual words of God. There are people who still reject the truth of the Bible, and God says in Romans 1, verse 21, that they became vain in their imagination and their foolish heart was darkened. Thank you for listening.